Good morning. My name is Jane Zanger. I teach 5th and 8th grade humanities here at Key, and I'm the Middle School Humanities department head. And my husband, Lee, who teaches science in the upper school. We have 2 kids who graduated from Key in the classes of 14 and 16. And I'm here with my colleague, Alice Drayton.
Good morning. My name is Alice Drayton and I teach, I don't think my video is up yet, but I have stopped it. I teach 7th and 8th grade humanities. I'm also the 7th grade team leader. And I have 2 children at the Key School. I have a 7th grader and a 10th grader. And I'm looking forward to sharing our humanities program with you. Jane, I'll give it back to you to start us off.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you all and to share our middle school humanities curriculum, which as humanities teachers, we know that when we teach literature, it's always informed by history. And when we teach history, it's always informed by literature. And so for a long time at Key School, we've just done those 2 things together. We integrate language arts and social studies or English and history curricula throughout from 5th grade all the way through 11th grade at Key. And because we have this large amount of time with kids throughout their time at Key, it makes it really easy to integrate other disciplines, visual and performing arts, music, dance sometimes even, and of course, there's some science and maker tech that comes in as well. The core skills that we focus on are what you would see in typical language arts or ELA and social studies. We do a lot of writing in the middle school and it's very process oriented. So we're focused on the process as much as the product. Kids do a lot of that writing right here at school. And we work through the whole process of, from the first concept or first stages of what question am I trying to answer all the way through a revised final draft. We're really trying to help kids develop their own narrative voice. And that happens through both analytical and creative writing. Throughout our curriculum in humanities, there's a lot of different kinds of projects, writing projects that kids will do. And there's just a real focus on reading. So analytical reading, so that kids learn how to inference and how to read between the lines and to make connections between the literature and the history that they're studying, that real critical thinking. And we also have kids who really love to read. And one of my favorite disciplinary challenges as a teacher is trying to get kids to close their independent reading books when it's time to start class, because they're kids who just love to read and don't want to put their books away. And as I mentioned, critical thinking is a big part of what students do. We have a very discursive environment. We do very little lecturing. It's lots of discussion and kids learn how to make connections. It's a very collaborative program, and we'll show you some examples. And even in the age of COVID, we're finding really exciting and productive ways for kids to collaborate. And public speaking, both informally in the ways that kids are having discussions or presenting findings after small group discussions, and then in much more formal ways with lots of rehearsals. And as I mentioned, we're a community of readers. These are many of the texts that we read as novel studies in the middle school. And then there's, nearly endless possibilities for independent reading as well. Our 5th and 6th grade curriculum fifth grade, they tie together really in a number of ways, but we have an essential question that is for really guides our work in every year. So in fifth grade, it's really around the idea of what makes a civilization. And we start out in ancient China, and then we move into the great kingdoms of West Africa, look at the Taino people in the Bahamas and on the island of Hispaniola, in the time just prior to European exploration. And we study all of that before we ever start looking at the American colonies and the systems there that developed. And one of our primary goals is for our students to understand that before the American colonies came to be and the United States came to be, there were incredible, thriving civilizations around the world, and that the people who came to colonize North America, either by choice or by force, brought with them and came from incredible civilizations, and that American history starts well before the colonies and well before for people of African descent, well before the enslavement, and for Native American people, well before Europeans arrived. We do many different projects, and this is where with West African drumming, we've brought in music. Students do tinkering in the makerspace, creating different colonial constructions, and we do field trips to both St. Mary's City and to Colonial Williamsburg. And our Annapolis Walk, which is that top photo that you can see, is really one of our signature humanities events. Our fifth graders take on the identity of a person from historic Annapolis in the colonial period, including enslaved people, tradespeople, and gentry. And they write a speech in first person from that historic person's perspective. They dress in costume, and they go throughout colonial Annapolis teaching the students and parents about these different identities. And then sixth grade continues in the period right after the American colonies into the development of the United States and what it means to be an American. And again, we're really focusing on the many voices and the voices that were included, the voices that were silenced or were not brought into, really taken into account in the first 150 years of the United States. Again, a very experiential curriculum. In the top photo, you see our annual Lewis and Clark Portage, where the students reenact the Corps of Discovery. And that just happened this past week. So even with the limitations posed by COVID, our students were able to get outside and with their masks on, reenact that experience. They do a trip to the Museum of Industry up in Baltimore. They do a Pioneer Roundup and a collaboration with the Outdoor Ed Department where they study both Civil War history and the outdoors at Harper's Ferry. And now I'm going to pass it on to Alice Drayton.
Thank you, Jane. I teach 7th and 8th grade, so I'm excited to tell you about those curriculums. 7th grade curriculum really takes all that the students have learned in 5th and 6th grade about themselves and life in America. And then we dig into the American system. And we ask them to focus on the question of who am I in the American system? It's essentially an exploration of American government. We really focus on and evaluating primary sources to be able to tell whether sources are valuable. We also talk a lot about activism, equity, and empathy. and affecting change. And as you can imagine, studying the government in the world today has been really exciting and dynamic. So it's a really fun year for them and very, very, has very deep learning implications. So we couple this with our experiential learning. We visit the Maryland State House where they meet representatives from Maryland and they get to see our government in action. We also go and look at our federal government when we go to DC. We visit the archives and we look at the primary source documents that helped establish the framework for our country. And it's really fun when we do that because if you look at the Constitution, there's some places where they scratched it out and rewrote. So we talk about the writing process at that point and how even our founding fathers had to draft and redraft and bring their document through different stages. We also in 7th grade visit the National Museum of African American History and Culture, where we talk further about American history and all of the people involved in establishing the story of American history. And the highlight of our 7th grade year is usually civics night. And that's where we invite our parents to come and engage in civil discourse with our students. And we discuss topics that the students have identified as interesting. So they really lead the show and they get to teach you how to engage in civic discourse and discuss higher level topics. So that's a really fun night. The pictures you see were from last year. We went to the museum. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to go back to the last slide. Our museum visit was fantastic. Unfortunately, the museum has closed. So we were really excited to do that last year. But in the coming years, there's so much opportunity in DC that we'll certainly add other things. The project that you see was a project that identified the themes of literature in the book, The Giver. So we do a lot of projects and public speaking where they display their projects and explain to the class what they're about. So now I'll move into 8th grade. So in the 8th grade, our curriculum is talking about what is the nature of power. And we actually move into the global world at that point. And we do a study of the 20th and the 21st century global topics, which is really interesting. We look at this through the lens of colonialism and elements of deep culture. So we carry this, we identify all the elements of deep culture, and then we apply them to different cultures around the world, which gives us an opportunity to highlight the point that humanity really has so many common themes running through, humanity has so many common themes running through across its path. We couple this with experiential learning, where we do comparative religion field trips, and we talk about the Hindu faith, the Muslim faith, and the Jewish faith, additionally learning about the Christian faith as well. We visit the Holocaust Museum while we're reading the book Night and studying the Holocaust, and that's an extraordinarily powerful experience for our students to see with their own eyes the pain that was caused during World War II. We also have a Latin American Symposium where again, they take on the identity of a person in Latin America and they look at the elements of culture that that person experiences and they present it to their parents and the school. In the picture below, you can see one of the displays from Puerto Rico. So, and then we have our Africa Week celebration where our students actually write books that they share with the kindergarten and 3rd grade. And that's what the picture in the top is from. So it's a really exciting curriculum and the kids love it. And we really enjoy teaching it because it makes them, it empowers them as thinkers, writers, readers, and especially it enables and it really fosters their curiosity in the world.